friends. So we are actually back after, it's been a while, like a couple weeks. And so if you are new, thanks. We're glad you're here. I'm Dr. Heather Rhodes, holistic pharmacist that teaches women how to simplify hormone health so that they can have better periods, get pregnant, do all the fun things that you get when your hormones are balanced. And then we have Leisha. I'll let her introduce herself just for anybody that hasn't watched us before.
I'm Leisha Drews, registered nurse and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And I also help women with better energy, better periods, and really starting to replenish their bodies after babies and make sure that nutrition can be simple for busy mamas so that we can feel really, really good and not like crap, like we're told we should feel as women.
Yes, it's just normal. You're postpartum. So today we are talking about, okay, so think about how many times have you wanted to go and get your hormones tested, right? Like you felt like something's been out of balance. You felt like something's been off and you're like, you know what? It's got to be my hormones. So we go to the doctor and we're like, hey, we think our hormones need tested. The doctor typically says like, oh, we don't do that. We don't even know what you're talking about. Or they'll like look at something and be like, oh, it all looks normal, right? But you know, things aren't normal. Like, you know, you aren't feeling okay. You know that there are some things you're experiencing that aren't quite lining up. You know, your cycle's irregular. There's so many pieces that you can gather. And so what we want to talk about today is how can you use a simple free tool that your body tells you every single month exactly what's going on with your hormones in order to know what your next steps and the next places you should add support should be. So what we're talking about is basal body temp tracking. We've talked about basal body temps in here before. And how to do it. We teach all about how to do this, what this, I guess it's a method. You think it's a method?
Yeah, definitely.
Like
it's
what
definitely
this habit looks
a
like.
Method of like collecting your own data and understanding your body better.
Yeah, because our whole goal is that you are becoming the expert on your body. And that's, I believe the goal in both of our programs too, is that we set people up to where you aren't having to consistently buy programs and go through new programs and buy meal plans and find new diets. Like we really address the root, and our goal, which I mean, I know it's mine. I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Leisha, but it really is that you become that expert so that you are the one that knows you don't have to go and rely on your doctor to test all the things or to tell you all the things. They're great and they're a great resource you're going to have on your healthcare team, but you're going to be the CEO of that team. So that's definitely our goal. Yours too, right, Leisha?
Yeah. And even just to keep you from buying 100 different hormone balance supplements on your Instagram ads, because that is something that I see a lot. And I think that one's one of my pet peeves the most, because they're just random things that could potentially help with your hormones, but also we're not looking at the full picture. Mm-hmm. We're not looking at your metabolism and your thyroid and your stress and your nutrition. And those things play a way, way bigger role in your hormone balance than if you're on the right supplement.
Wow.
So
true.
Really coming back to some of these basics and some of the things that they don't sell because they're actually free can be really, really helpful. So basal body temperature, just quick recap if this is new to you, do go back and look at some of our videos about tracking ovulation and understanding your cycle, and we'll go way more in depth. But basal body temperature sounds fancier than it is. It's literally taking your temperature every single morning when you wake up with a $10 thermometer. That's all it is.
Yep. And you have to have a basal body thermometer too. You can't just have like a regular one because we're looking for really small shifts and changes there. And so thinking about, okay, what are we actually gathering from this information? We have 3 things that we want to tell you that you can gather and you can learn about your body just by tracking your temps. So the first one is looking at your temperatures overall. So your body has an ideal range that it wants to be in terms of where your temps existing. And the reason that this matters is because basically your body perceives, I don't want to say perceives, but your body, everything about your metabolism, everything about how your body is functioning at the very, very deep core is related to energy. So how much energy is coming in? How is your body utilizing that energy? And then how freely is it releasing energy through metabolic processes in the form of heat? So that's where our temps come in, because it's almost like this tiny little window. Think about, if you were looking into a house from the outside, you're looking at this window and you're seeing, okay, like the mom is making dinner. The dad is vacuuming the house. The kids are making their beds. Like, you're seeing what kind of work is everybody in this house doing. That's what your basal body temps are telling you about when we look at the general range that they're in. So we're thinking like, oh, okay, like, is your body being fueled in a way that every little system and organ can do what it needs to do? And a byproduct of these organs functioning well is the production of heat, which is going to be released and you are going to see in your basal body temps. So if you've got really low temps, it's a big clear sign to us, okay, metabolism function might be lower. That means your body is conserving energy. It's holding on. The people inside, the organs, the processes that your body's going through, they are not working as well because the body doesn't feel super safe and secure enough to let everybody kind of like go and do what they need to do. The body's like, hey, we don't have a ton of resources. We're not getting a lot of energy in. We need everybody to sit here, just do the bare minimum that you need to do. And then we're going to see how long this can last before we get those resources available. Is this connecting? You feel like that's a good way to pull it
Yeah,
together?
definitely. Definitely. So talking about ranges of what we're looking for, there are going to be, and this goes back to some of the videos we've done before, but there are going to be lower ranges of temperatures prior to ovulation and higher ranges of temperatures after ovulation. And so you're probably going to have your baseline temperatures at a certain place. And wherever you are right now is an okay place to be. And it's really helpful to know what it is. So if you notice you start taking your temperature around your period and you're in the 96s, that's a pretty low body temperature. But if you're in the mid to higher 97s, that's usually something that would be about what we expect prior to ovulation.
Yeah.
And then we usually see about 0.5 degree to 1 degree of elevation in that temperature in a range. It's not going to be the exact same number every day after ovulation. So I think what we're going to start with are 3 things. The number one thing that you can tell with body temperature is how well that whole system is working, your metabolism and your thyroid and all of those organs. Like, do they have the resources that they need? And then the second thing that's the most obvious, I think, when we're talking about fertility is if and when you're ovulating.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you're ovulating isn't actually the goal. That is a big piece of the goal, to know whether or not you're ovulating, but actually when you're ovulating can tell us a lot too. Whether you are trying to conceive or trying to balance your hormones, there's a lot that can tell you about if you're ovulating early in your cycle or later in your cycle. It gives us a lot of really important info into your estrogen and your progesterone and even your detoxification and just the stress on your body in general. So there's so much more to it than just knowing if and when you ovulate.
Yeah, so good. So I'm actually going to show a graph real quick, just so that everybody can kind of see a little bit about what we're talking. This is an example of a basal body temp. It says fertility friends. So I know we've hit fertility a couple times, but this is for so much more than if you're trying to conceive. And I think that's a big misconception I see a lot of clients have. They're like, well, I'm not trying to get pregnant, so I'm not going to track my temps anymore. Or I was trying to get pregnant and that's when I tracked my temps and now I'm not. I don't do that any longer because conception's not my goal. If you are working on balancing your hormones, if you are wanting to see things like a faster metabolism, more energy, even eventually getting to something like weight loss in your goals for your health, this information is going to be huge. It tells you so much. So first you can see this shift that Leisha was referring to, the beginning of your cycle, pre-ovulation, your temps are naturally going to be lower. Once you ovulate, that means, remember guys, go back to some of our previous episodes. Once you ovulate, your body produces a temporary organ that releases progesterone, and progesterone is a heat producing hormone. So when you get that hormone being pumped through your body, it increases your body temp. And that's how you see a temp shift once you've ovulated. So some of the things Leisha hit on. So number one that we're looking at is overall temps in general. Are you floating in the low range? Are you in kind of this mid ideal range? And then what is that telling us about your body, specifically your thyroid and your metabolism? How well is your body feeling safe and supported in a way that it can produce energy effectively? Second thing we're looking at is not just if you're ovulating, but we're also paying attention to when you're ovulating. So a lot of times if you've been conditioned, taught traditionally in sex ed that you have a 28-day cycle, you ovulate on day 14. Not always true. Same thing with if you are just plugging in when your period starts on your period app and you aren't utilizing basal body temps, that app algorithm may be averaging when it's suspecting your ovulation happened, which could be totally off. So for example, some months I ovulate on day 13, some months I ovulate on day 20. The app is going to merge in the middle. I've never ovulated in the middle. I've only ovulated on either of those two kind of day ranges. And so that's, again, something that you get the power to know and understand when you are tracking things more clearly. And so looking at this example, cycle day 15 just happened to be when this person ovulated, and you're seeing the temp shift right here. And so day 15 is a great day to ovulate. If you're ovulating any sooner than really I would say like 11, it's kind of my cutoff for, oh, we've got some issues here. That tells us a little bit about what's happening with estrogen production and estrogen detox. So that's going to be an important thing to note. Same thing if you're ovulating much later, if you're ovulating after, day 20, and we see from your basal body temp chart that your body has tried to ovulate a couple times, that's a really good indicator that maybe your body's not feeling super safe. You might have some PCOS-like symptoms. Your body's kind of pausing ovulation, and we're going to help to restore that so that you can have ovulation each time your body tries. So the cool thing that a lot of people talk about too is this dip that happens right before ovulation. Estrogen is a hormone that actually tells our body to kind of, I don't want to say it, we see a temp drop when estrogen is present. So when you have high levels of estrogen, it kind of pushes these temps down a little bit. And so that is why you kind of see this dip right before ovulation, because remember what's happening when your body ovulates, your estrogen peaks and then the egg releases. So typically we see a drop in temperature. It's like an inverse relationship. We see a drop in temperature when that estrogen peaks, and then your body ovulates, and then you get the progesterone. And now Leisha's going to tell us about our third point, which is why understanding your luteal phase from the time your body starts releasing progesterone until your period starts is so, so important.
Yeah. And so something else I was thinking about lots of things while you were talking about. One of the things is, if you look at this chart and you have or haven't been tracking, but you start tracking and your chart doesn't look exactly like this, this is like a beautiful chart. This is perfect. This is like textbook. As you know, if you're here with us, our bodies are not textbook all the time. So there are lots of charts. Actually, Heather and I have been looking at some fun charts together of our clients and like going back and forth, like, what do you think happened here? And what do you think happened here? Because sometimes it is not this clear. So I just want you to know that that's where having support in your back pocket of someone who has looked at a lot of these charts and understands the body processes. Like, if yours doesn't look like this is where you need support so that we can see what actually is going on. So I just wanted to mention that, sometimes our charts don't look like that. And that doesn't mean you're hopeless or something's totally wrong. It just means you probably need some extra help looking at it. But really looking at your luteal phase. So luteal phase is from ovulation to your next period. Your luteal phase can tell us a lot. So a couple of things that we look for in that luteal phase is we do look for that temp spike. And if we see, like on this beautiful chart, that the temp raises and it stays elevated for, I can't see it super well, but yeah, that's like a full 13, 14 days, then that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for this really solid post ovulation phase. And what that tells us is that there is not a ton of excess estrogen in the body pushing the temps down. Sometimes if there is excess estrogen, it can cause your temps not to elevate quite as quickly or to have them be more up and down in that luteal phase. You can also have a much shorter luteal phase. Sometimes we were just looking at a chart that was like 9 days for a luteal phase. And that generally means that your body is not able to continue to produce progesterone as long, which is usually more of a metabolic issue. Sometimes it has to do with the thyroid. And it always goes back to stress on the body and
stress.
And as much as that feels like a really like blanket statement, like, oh, you're just stressed. Like, I've had doctors tell me that. That's not what we're telling you. We're not telling you, oh, you're just stressed. We're saying there is something else going on in your body, that your body is running on stress hormones. So we need to look directly at your nutrition. We need to look at your emotional stress. We need to look at your sleep and all the things that play into stress, because your body is telling us that it needs help, basically. So a short cycle can be a sign that something is going on there. And then also really just having that variation of temps in the second half of the cycle can tell us that there's maybe some estrogen issues and that liver is not detoxifying well, or just like there could be gut issues, like all kinds of things that could be causing your body not to necessarily feel safe to continue to produce progesterone or to not have the nutrients it needs to have that really strong progesterone response.
Yeah.
And there was one other thing I was going to say that I just totally lost. So what do you have?
We'll come back to it. Let me hit on this real quick because we are going to kind of keep this brief and like a drive-through training for you guys today so that you can just kind of listen on the way and then start thinking about these things. But one thing you see on this chart right here, how this kind of, their temps were up and then they took a tiny little dip again. So remember that estrogen doesn't just go away the second half of your cycle. So what Leisha is talking about is how estrogen can kind of influence what you're seeing here. So if your body is having a hard time detoxing estrogen, then we can see a lot of variability here. We can see temps rise more slowly than a quick jump like this. Like there's so many things we're able to look at and combine with the symptoms you're experiencing and say, oh, okay, this is probably what's going on. And this is how we're going to support it. Because sometimes we think things are as simple as like, oh, I need to make more progesterone or I need to make less estrogen. And that's not always what happens. It's a twofold process. Your body might be getting the signal to make plenty of progesterone. Your progesterone levels could be great. Your body may not be under a ton of physiological stress. But if your estrogen isn't detoxing well, if your gut is in a place where it's not breaking down that estrogen effectively, you could see what might look like some low progesterone indicators on a basal body temp. But because again, like you have someone who comes in and knows, okay, these are how the hormones are supposed to look month to month, looking at your chart, pairing it with your symptoms, it's almost always very clear. Like Leisha said, we've been doing this back and forth this week, looking at clients and it's like, oh yeah, like she's not breaking down estrogen, this byproduct of it. Or, okay, like she probably did this. Let's look at her food log that day. Let's look at, what happened in the couple of weeks before we see these temps. And so I just think it's really cool that there's so much you can tell and put together when you have that support. And then the other thing that I absolutely loved when I started tracking my own basal body temps is they were all over the place in the beginning. And I actually was going through my program myself, like me particularly, like walking through my method alongside my girls. And I noticed that after about 2 to 3 months of really focusing in on that metabolism support, nutrition, pulling the pieces together, I started to see less variabilities. So a lot of times my clients are like, my temps are all over the place. And I really kind of feel like that's normal until you're getting really intentional about hormone support. And so if you're starting off or you're just looking back at your charts and you're like, hey, this information might be helpful for me, and you're feeling like this is not what I think I should be seeing, or this is off a little bit, I want to encourage you that that's really normal if you don't have those kind of clear tools and action steps to get you there. And we never want to treat or, try to perform to a specific level on a chart or blood work or anything like that. But it can be a really good tool to help us get some insight, to help take that peek inside of what's going on in your body. That number one is free, that number two isn't going to be too complicated, and number three is going to give you really clear action steps. So we can take this information and look and say, hey, I think this is the place your body needs some specific individualized support.
Yeah, absolutely. So since we're talking about, kind of a little bit of a next level subject when it comes to hormone balance, we would love to hear your questions. Feel free to comment in the comments here. We also are going to link to our Instagrams. That's a great way you can DM either one of us, and we love to chat. So just know that this is something that there is more support available for. And both of us are pretty nerdy and we like to look at charts. So
yes. And it gets so easy. Like, it's so funny. I feel like in the beginning, people kind of feel like it almost feels like, stepping onto a bike for the first time. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. But like, imagine if the first time you like never knew how to ride a bike and you were like in your 30s. Not that that would be a bad thing, but a lot of us are like, oh my gosh, I would have missed out on so much. Right. And so think of it like this. And also I really encourage people when it comes to basal body temp tracking, this does not have to be a forever thing. So like, I will randomly take months off and be like, fine, because I know my body so well. I know other symptoms. I know other things that I'm looking for that I can still pinpoint exactly what's going on. And then sometimes I'll bring it back and be like, okay, cool. Let me look at it again for another couple of months. So it's not a forever thing. You're not making this huge commitment. It is literally saying, hey, let me spend some time just really trying to understand what's happening here, because it's going to push my health forward. There's no way it can't. So
right. Exactly. Love it.
Yay. So send us your questions if you have them. We're so excited that you are joining us and we are back. And we will chat next time. Anything else?
Yep, that's it. Bye.
Bye, guys.